In this video, we will talk about norms and deviations. We will start from social norms and social deviation, but the focus of our topic or our discussion is linguistic norms and linguistic deviations. This video is really important for those students who are studying pragmatics, stylistics, semantics, linguistics as a course. So without wasting any time, let us look into the definition of norms and deviation from the perspective of society. What is a social norm and what is a social deviation? Then we will move toward linguistic norms and linguistic deviations. Stylistics is the study of linguistic and other expressive resources in a language that are used to convey different meanings and effects. So in stylistics, we talk about those resources of language that are used to convey different meanings and how we can convey different meanings by deviating from those patterns. Norms and deviations are significant aspects of stylistics that refer to the standard and non-standard forms of language used respectively. अब यहाँ पे स्टैंडर्ड और नॉन स्टैंडर्ड फॉर्म की इस तरह बात की गई है कि स्टैंडर्ड मीन्स that is always followed in society, the pattern that are always there, and the non-standard form जो है जब हम उसे deviate standard pattern से करते हैं, that is why it is called non-standard forms of language. A norm is a standard. Now we will start from the social definition of a norm. A norm is a standard or average value, a behavior that is expected or typical of a group that someone has to follow. For example, if you are born in a society that you then you learn certain cultural norms, certain cultural patterns that you always are following blindly without knowing that you got to know these patterns from your culture. And but when we deviate, when we have variation or difference from those standards, values, or those average norms, then it is called deviation. For example, now I'm going to give you a very positive example. In a classroom of students, the average grade on a test might be B. This is the norm or expected outcome for the group. However, individual students may receive grades that are higher or lower than the norm indicated a deviation. For example, in a class, if the average grade is B, and if some students take grade A, then it would be considered a deviation. Or if some students take grade D or E, then it would also be considered a deviation. But the first deviation of A would be considered a positive deviation, and the second one would be considered negative deviation. Importance. In statistical analysis, norms and deviations are important concepts for understanding the variability and distribution of data. And for this, we always use standard deviation, and this is one of the important concepts of statistics as well. Okay, now we will move towards the definition of linguistic norms and how do we deviate from those linguistic norms, what are different types of linguistic norms and linguistic deviations. We will also discuss those. Norms. Norms in linguistic terms are the accepted standards or conventions of using, and how do we use a language, or how do we structure our language, and what rules of language are shared by a particular speech community. And these norms vary from context, culture to culture, and society to society as well. And they encompass various aspects of language that we have: grammar here, pronunciation, vocabulary, syntax, semantics, pragmatics. All these things are involved here. What is the benefit of these norms? These norms are used to establish a sense of order, coherence, uniformity in communication, and then other than that, they enable effective communication and facilitate understanding between individuals. For example, if we are following the norms of any speech community, then it would be better to, with just few words, we could convey our message completely. We could convey the emotions that we want to convey through those words. And there are some of the types of these linguistic norms, and those are oral norms, written norms, and norms of emotive prose. We will start with the oral norms. Oral norms means that is dealing with the speech, and that deal with the pattern of speaking. Oral refer to the rules and standard for speaking and pronunciation that are accepted within a particular language community. This is also important. We need to focus on a language community. In one language community, for example, we have two basic groups, American English and British English. It is not a problem, but some could be to take it seriously as well, that in British English we do not pronounce r sound, but in American English we pronounce r sound. In Pakistani and even in Indian English we pronounce r sound, as we say car, mother, heart, but in British English it would be pronounced as car, mother. So these are some of the oral norms. Other than that, we also have to consider intonation, pattern, accent, grammar, which determine the quality of spoken communication. For example, as you know, there are different functions of intonation. A louder intonation tells the here that the speaker wants to continue, or we could also use a louder intonation patterns in order to question someone. So moving on to written norms. Written norms on the other hand refer to the conventions and rules that govern the written form of a language, and in it we have spellings, grammar. For example, if we just write knowledge and we do not put k in the spellings of knowledge, then it would be considered wrong. Over here we again have grammar, punctuation and style. These norms are largely standardized and enforced through educational system, and we get to know about these norms from the schools in which we are learning, or from the formal language institutions. The written norms are seen as the standard form of language, representing the idealized form of communication that speakers should strive for. But we mostly, in our speeches, we generally break the pattern written norms, because a lot of context, shared context, is used in so speech and in our communication. So we just say less and understand more, but in written for writing something we have to write more. Okay, moving on to the last type of linguistic norm, and that is norms of emotive prose. Emotive prose is a writing style that heavily relies on emotions. We simply get the idea from emotive to convey a message or a story. The norm may vary depending on the genre, what type of genre. For example, short story, poem, novel, it varies according to genre, and other than that it also varies according to our communicative context as well. Some may argue that the norm of emotive prose is to create a strong emotional response in the reader, while others may say it is used to when we want to have both logic and emotional response, then we use this emotive prose. Now we are going to move toward the definition of linguistic deviation. What is deviation? Deviations refer to the non-standard or unconventional use of language that departs from the norm. So when we violate the patterns of linguistic norms, then you could say that we are moving toward linguistic deviation. That's as we have already talked about norm. Now in some way deviations can be intentional or in unintentional, and when we do a deviation we want to convey something more to the hearer or to the listener or reader, and can be used for very such as to draw attention to the message, to create a specific effect, to challenge the standard norms, or to convey a different meaning altogether. Deviations can occur at different levels of language, as we have grammar, vocabulary, syntax, pronunciation, and semantics. They often require a specific context and background knowledge. This is important. If we do not have background knowledge, then it would be tough for the reader to understand. That is why if we are reading any novel, and in the novel if we have any deviation, then we get to know what the author wants us to conceive or perceive from the text. There are 5 types of deviation: lexical, grammatical, phonological, graphical, and graphical, you could say graphological and semantic. Okay, moving on to first type of deviation, that is lexical deviation. This deviation deals with when we are creating new words, or by following the normal standard patterns, or by just moving away from the normal standard pattern. That is called lexical deviation. Creating new words, or by following the same patterns of forming new word, or you could say when we create new words by just bringing something totally new that is not following the norms. For example, the first type is neologism, and in neologism it is the invention of new words items, that is items of vocabulary, is one of the more obvious ways in which a poet may exceed the normal resources of language. And over here we have webinar, malware, brunch, and these all words are types of you could take it into the types of neologism, and we will talk about those types. First of all, we will start blend words, a specific type of neologism that blends together two words to create a new word, जिसमें हम क्या करते हैं जी, हम दो वर्ड्स को ले लेते हैं और हम उन दोनों वर्ड्स को blend कर देते हैं. For example, we could take the first part of first word and the last part of second word, and we could combine those words in order to form a new word, just as we have smoke or brunch. From breakfast and lunch we have brunch, and then we have smoke. From smoke and fog we have smog. So we have invented new words, and now they are part of dictionary, and they are even used in our societies and cultures as well. Derivation. It is a word formation process that attach derivation affixes to the main form to create a new word, in which we just attach any prefix or suffix in order to form a new word. As we could say appear, disappear, now we have totally new word. Justice, injustice, or you could say justify. Clipping, in which we reduce or shorten the word without changing the exact meaning. When we don't, and the meanings are not changed, but we have reduced the word photograph, we could say photo, influenza, flu. Compounding, in which we again combine two words but we do not shorten it, as we shorten blending, जिसमें हमने उसमें branch बना दिया. But in compounding we do not shorten these words, as we have classroom, as we have slideshow. Conversion. A word of one grammatical form converts into another grammatical form without changing the spelling. When we do just change the grammatical form. For example, earlier the word Google was used as a noun, but now it is used as a verb as well. So when we do not change the spelling, but we just change the grammatical category. For example, the word first of all was used as a noun, and now it is used as a verb. Back formation. It is the process of forming a new word by removing suffixes from another word. Put simply, it is the shortened word created from a longer word. जब हम किसी एक अगेन जिस तरह क्लिपिंग में हमने शॉर्ट किया था वर्ड, बट उसके अंदर जो था आपके पास वर्ब नहीं बनता, बट व्हेन वी शॉर्ट द स्पेशली द नाउन, जब हम नाउन्स को शॉर्ट करके एक वर्ब बना लें, दैट इज कॉल्ड बैक फॉर्मेशन. एडिट फ्रॉम एडिटर. Acronym and abbreviation. It is a popular verb formation process in which an initialism is pronounced as a word. We are going to take the start part of all the different words. हम पहला उनका word pick कर लेते हैं तमाम words का, and the word that we have of at the end, it is pronounced as a new word. वो आपके आखिर में एक नए word की तरह pronounce होगा. But in abbreviation we again do the same thing, that हम पहला word pick करते हैं, but we do not we cannot pronounce the word as a new word. For example, over here we have used lad, language acquisition device, but over here we have used CNG, compressed natural gas. We cannot pronounce it as a single word, but it is over here it is pronounced as a single word, or you could say it is a new word as well. Loan translation or clock. Clock or loan translation is a word or phrase borrowed from another language by literal verb. When we borrow one word from another language, but we also translate that word, that is called clock or loan translation. For example, Übermensch. This is one of the famous concept from German language, and this is called Superman, and this is used in most of the modern novels and modern dramas as well. Borrowing. When we just borrow the word as it is without changing the spellings, without changing the pronunciation, that is called borrowing. Algebra and murder. Algebra is borrowed from Arabic and murder is borrowed from French. Now we will talk about grammatical deviation. Before that we talked about lexical deviation, and one of the basic type of was that neologism, and when we discussed after that we discussed subtypes of neologism. Now we will discuss grammatical deviation. Grammatical deviation in stylistics is when a person deliberately utilizes language in a way that violates the grammar rules. जब हम ग्रामर के रूल्स को वायलेट करें, मीन्स सब्जेक्ट वर्ब एग्रीमेंट के पैटर्न को वायलेट करें, अदर देन दैट ऑब्जेक्ट कॉम्प्लीमेंट या जो सब्जेक्ट वर्ब ऑब्जेक्ट का रिलेशन, जब हम इसे वायलेट करें, दैट इज कॉल्ड grammatical deviation. And in grammatical deviation we could have both morphology and we could have both syntax as well. A writer may violate the rules of subject verb agreement, or she can use article less or subject less style. Okay, I doesn't like him, after this is wrong. Actually this sentence is wrong, as हमें यहाँ पे use करना चाहिए था I don't like him. After that, he me saw. He saw me, but we have used he me saw. This could be used in different poems as well. He me saw. We have to put me over here, but again this is incorrect. But in order to catch the attention of the listener and reader, we use the sentence saw you anything, you saw anything. We need to use subject over here, but we have used it after saw. Phonological deviation, it actually deals with these deviations, deals with the patterns of sound, patterns of phonology on the surface, or you could say deeply as well. This can be achieved through omission, elision, that is called elision, dropping of sound. There are conventional licenses of verse composition. As you know, in poetry we say that poets have the license to form any pattern of rhyme, rhythm, scheme, so they take the help of phonological deviation in order to achieve the pattern of rhyming scheme or rhythm. They change the pronunciation of the original words so that the poet may better and more easily arrange sound patterns. Already explained poetic license उनके पास होता है जिसकी वजह से ये कर सकते हैं. अब moving on to what is omission, it is dropping of sounds or letters, and but it is called elision as well. But you need to remember this elision because it could be asked in paper of stylistics, and it has been asked number of times. But elision could be from the start, or could be from the middle, or could be from the end. If it is at the start, it is called aphasis, amid, alone, syncope. If it is in the middle, and if it is from the end, it is called apocope, all, with, of. Now we have its example in front of us. It is used by Robert Burns in his poem A Red Rose, Red Rose. Till all, instead of saying all, he has used just or in order to create, or in order to maintain the balance of rhythm in these verses. Till all the seas gang dry, my dear, and the rocks melt with, instead of with saying, he has just used we. But we know when we have comma over here, we have dropped, this means we have dropped some sounds. Other than that, it also creates a particular effect on the reader. All the seas means it is referring to all the seas would dry, but and all the rocks melt with the sun. But I will love thee, I will love you still, my dear, with the while the sands of life shall run. This is too good. Special pronunciation could also be achieved. For example, we could change the pattern of stress. Instead of stressing the first word, we could stress the second. Sorry, instead of stressing the first syllable, we could stress the second syllable in order to achieve this pattern of, or in order to achieve concurrency in the pattern of rhythm. Okay, in this poem by P.B. Shelley, Ode to the West Wind, one of the most famous poems of P.B. Shelley, we have used when and behind. And we have created a particular stress pattern ताकि हमारे पास जो rhythm है उसे follow किया जाता रहे. Graphological deviation. Graphological deviation can be taken as language which does not consider the rules of punctuation, capitalization, parenthesis. जब हम इन चीज़ों के rules, especially capitalization, punctuation और parenthesis के rules को हम follow नहीं करते, that is called graphological deviation. And for that we have E. Cummings, and his style is too famous in regard to these types of deviation. And this is one of his poems, and in his poem he starts as collision, no comma, collapse, and no capitalization as well. If you just notice collision, collapse, as peacefully. Over here it should be used small a, but he has used capital A, sorry, as peacefully lifted into the awful beauty of sunset, the young city. Instead of using any comma overall, and instead of beginning the new verses with capital words, he hasn't done that. And also he has capitalized the word in between. So all these would be considered a type of graphological deviation. Now, talking about the last type of deviation, that is semantic deviation. A semantic deviation describes the ambiguousness of phrases and words used in a sentence. Therefore, semantic deviations serve as the heart of literary work because it enables people to understand the different meanings. If you want to convey different meanings, or if you want to make the readers somewhat want to give them ambiguous meaning, then we use semantic deviation. As we could say, William Wordsworth has said this: child is the father of man. No, how it is possible that child could be the father of man? We need to interpret this, and we could have number of different subjective interpretations. Beauty is truth, truth is beauty. How is it possible? If beauty is truth, and then how could truth be the beauty? She was a phantom of delight. First of all, she, then phantom. And how could a phantom be a source of delight as well? So all these would lead to ambiguity. For that is all for today. If you have any question and query, you can type in the comment box, but for that you have to like and subscribe our channel. Thank you so much.